Welcome to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we help ambitious W-2 employees who want to leave their job within 12 months, earn $1 million per year, drive their dream car, pursue their passions, and take control of their life. You're going to learn from people who have replaced their W-2 income by wholesaling real estate, a way to earn big checks by finding discounted real estate and passing it off to an investor who has money and can pay you a $25,000 finder's fee. We're going to give you 2 weekly interviews and 1 expert-led masterclass in front of a live audience of DealMachine community members, people who are living this journey that you're going on as well. My co-host is Ryan Haywood, whose sales job cut his commissions in 2019, so he quit. And since his wife, Megan, was also pregnant at the time, he took a 14-day wholesaling challenge and made $8,500 and has gone on to do 400 deals since then in St. Joseph, Missouri. I'm David Lecko, and I created a process for finding off-market deals that's helped people close 10,000 deals in all 50 states, which turned into the software platform DealMachine. Today, we've got a live masterclass hosted by a really great expert, and she's actually one of the fastest performance coaches for real estate investors, was a consultant for the DIA, and has helped leaders up to $1 million to $2 billion companies increase their revenue and get the most out of their teams. The topic today, since we're talking about building a life through wholesaling real estate, is the top 4 lies that we tell ourselves that limit our profits. Annie's going to break through, as you'll see, for 100 people on this audience who have these limiting beliefs, and in real time, give her so much praise for helping them break through. You guys are going to love this episode. Make sure you're subscribed, and also leave us a review if you've gotten any value from this podcast. It helps us make more content to get you to financial freedom.
The DealMachine REI Podcast. Everything you need to know to get started in real estate investing.
Well, welcome everybody. If it's your first time, you're invited to this because you're a DealMachine customer. It's not about DealMachine though on this call, it's about you. So we're here so you can help yourself invest in yourself, your education, your team, and your network. The purpose of this is to learn from world-class experts and grow your real estate investing business. And we're going to give you a Q&A at the end to overcome specific barriers you guys might have related to what our special guest is talking to or not. Some reminders from the group is if you guys have questions, definitely come to Ryan's office hours. So Ryan's on the call as well, and he hosts those Tuesdays and Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So I'm going to post that in the chat for you guys as reference. There you go. We also want you guys to be able to network with each other. So we've set up a URL that allows you guys to put your name and what you want to connect about, so you guys can actually figure out like who on these calls in what city, etc. if you have a deal and you need help with, for example. We've also got a Facebook group that you guys can get involved with there. And we also have the Academy event coming up, and that's going to be October 10th and 11th in Indianapolis for investors who've done $100,000 in revenue in their past year, and they actually want to get up to the next level. And so we've also got replays of the very best master classes here, these expert-led classes on the actual DealMachine Real Estate Investing podcast. So that's available on Apple and Spotify, so you can listen to those while you're out and about. And today's topic is going to be the top 4 lies real estate investors tell ourselves that limit our profit. Before we introduce you to our special guest, though, I did want to see if anybody had any wins. I'd love for you guys to raise your hand or put in the chat if you guys have any wins. And I'll just say I had a win today. I just closed on a house and ended up getting like a 70% off the list price by putting a offer on old MLS listing at 70% of the list price, and they accepted it. So I was pretty excited about that. And it looks like we've got Sean has a win that he would like to share. Go ahead and unmute, Sean.
I was on vacation. I took family out to Laguna Beach, California this last weekend, and I was driving around. I added 5 properties in Laguna Beach. So sending out the postcards already, and doing it from wherever I'm at. I'm looking for opportunities. So a little bit higher price point than Minnesota, though. But that's a good thing.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I love that you're looking for opportunities there. Now, did you reach out? Did you send text, calls, or postcards?
I did auto postcards right off the bat, right? Boom, put the address in, hit the postcards. So
love it. That's a great win, Sean. All right. Well, let me transition over to our guest, Annie. and she's one of the fastest growing real estate performance coaches. She was a consultant for the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, and has helped leaders at $1 million to $2 billion companies increase their revenue and get the most out of their teams. Wow. Our topic today is going to be revealing the lies we teach ourselves that limit our profit and what to do about it to unlock your potential. So Annie, would love to turn it over to you to tell us, what are these 4 lies? I'm wondering if I'm telling myself one of them.
Well, you might be telling yourself one of them, or you might be telling yourself many of them. So what I'm going to do for everybody on the call here, I'm so excited to be a part of this. So thank you all for having me. We're going to go through this. It's going to feel like a bit of a fire hose, and that's okay, because anytime we're working on our brains and we're working on bringing new information, it can sometimes feel like that. So I'm going to get started here. Let me just make sure that I can share my screen with everybody. Give me one quick second.
You should be co-host, I see, and so I think you can do that.
Yes, thank you. All right, beautiful. So here we go. I'm just going to start this up so everybody can see. All right, everyone. So here we go. This is going to be a little bit of a wild ride here. So these are the top 4 lies. And the reason why I have these lies, or I discovered these lies, is I've worked for the past 15 years with entrepreneurs at all stages of real estate, as well as across all areas of entrepreneurship. And what I started to notice was that we all create these lies in our subconscious brains. The subconscious brain runs at 11 million data points a second. The conscious brain only runs at 40 data points a second. So in essence, we are being run by our subconscious brains. Now, that doesn't sound that great for most of us. However, once we know what the lies are, we have a chance to change the game and actually see more possibility for deals, for profit, for team performance. So that's why I'm bringing this information to you all today. So we're just going to jump to the next part of the slide here. Why should you care? Whenever there is some unresolved trauma in your life, which comes from that subconscious brain, it is going to restrict the money you can make and the growth of any team. Now, I know that most of the people on the call here are solo entrepreneurs, and that's why I wanted to address this with all of you, because you might not even be aware that some of these things are hiding in your subconscious trying to cause you some issue. So in order to better understand this concept, I want to just talk about the fact that you can see 2 iPhones up in the corner there, a green one and a white one. Now, a human being cannot act in conflict with what you hold as true. The only problem for most of us as human beings is that we create a story that we believe is true when we were a little kid between the age of 5 and 11. When we create the story that we think is true, we can't act in conflict with that story. We have to act in complete congruence with that story. So what we hold as true and what we decide is true as a real little kid will dictate our behavior, which will dictate our environment, which will dictate our experience of our world. So for example, you see those 2 phones up there. If I were to pick up a phone and be like, oh, everybody, this is my green phone. If you want my green phone, you have to ask me for it. We could easily coordinate action because you could see, oh, Annie's phone is green. I can coordinate action with her by asking her for her green phone. Now, if I grew up as a little kid believing all phones were white, and you knew for a fact that my phone was green because you could see it that way, and you said, hey, Annie, hand me the green phone, I wouldn't know what you were talking about because I think that the phone is white. Now, this is what happens in our subconscious brains. One person, I'm just going to use myself as an example, I might be like, well, this phone is white, therefore everything about the white phone makes sense to me. If someone were to ask for a green phone, I can't respond to them, therefore I'm in some level of suffering because I don't have the same language. I don't have the same understanding that they do. This happens all the times to us when we are building these stories as little kids. The only problem is our reality changes and we're not in that little kid reality anymore, even though our subconscious brain still thinks we are. What our subconscious brain believes and what our subconscious brain holds as true is going to dictate what we believe, what our behaviors are, what our environment looks like, and what our experience of life is. So if we can change this for each one of you on this call today, or make you experience something different, then you have a chance to lift off that money and team growth restriction that you might have subconsciously placed on yourselves. So I know this is a big concept, so I'm going to dive into it a little bit deeper. So knowing this, we have to look at what makes something a lie, what makes something a truth. In our lives, anything that is a lie will cause us to live in very ineffective emotions. It'll cause us then to exhibit very ineffective behaviors. And the environment and our decision making will come from ineffective behaviors, and it won't serve us. It'll put us in a place of suffering. That's how we know we're living in a lie, if we're experiencing suffering in our lives in some area. Now, the truth is very different. When we live in the truth, we experience effective emotions. We have effective behaviors that come from those emotions, and we create environments and decision making that serves us, and our life feels easy. So if you're feeling any level of suffering in your life, you really want to go back to, well, what is the lie that I might be telling myself that's creating that suffering? So I hope this makes sense. Is anybody beginning to catch on that our brain will mess us up and do crazy things to us in a very unexpected way, all based on what we believe to be true when we were a young child between the age of 5 and 11?
Let me see if this makes sense, just to make sure I'm tracking. I'm kind of reminded of when my parents, when I was growing up, they would always say, clean your plate. And then, I was trying to lose weight as an adult, and it felt very strange to throw away perfectly good Cheetos, even though that was going to be something I shouldn't eat. It felt good to throw away perfectly good Cheetos because of what my parents had ingrained in me.
That is very accurate. I mean, and you
that kind of
yourself
the same
story.
thing.
Yeah, 100%. As a little kid, you probably told yourself the story. If I'm a good kid if I clean my plate. So then as an adult, if you clean your plate, you're not a good kid. That lie creates suffering because you feel like you have to clean your whole plate. And if you don't, then you feel guilty.
Right.
Dead on. Exactly. So the reason why I bring this up is because we always hear this word trauma, and I hate the word trauma because our society makes it be something not great. But the reality of trauma, if we can redefine it, is that there are big traumas, there are little traumas. And all of our lives begin with trauma, but trauma is really just a moment of time where we experience the inability to control our environment. So if we can look at trauma and look at all the places in our lives where we have been unable to control the environment, entrepreneurship, right? Because every day is something different fires to put out. If we can look at this and realize that all of these lies, all these stories we told ourselves as little kids begin with some level of trauma, then we have a way to change our story. So I'm going to use a very short story about a caveman because I want to put this into perspective. So when we all imagine for a second that we are all hunters of a tribe, right? Now, one day we go down to the lake, and next to the lake, there's this fuzzy orange and black rock. We decide that we're going to jump on this fuzzy orange and black rock and just sit there. What we don't realize, though, is the fuzzy orange and black rock is a tiger until it attacks us. It rips off half of our face, and we have to run back to our cave just to get somewhere safe. The reason why I do this, and I talk about this concept, is that you just went through a trauma. You had a tiger attack you, and up until that moment, you had no idea that a fuzzy orange and black thing was dangerous or could kill you or was a tiger. Now, the first thing your brain does in that moment is your brain, once you're safe, is going to want to learn. The way your brain learns is it replays that situation over and over and over in your mind so you can learn from it. So the next morning when you wake up as this cave person, you look outside your cave, you want to go outside, but you don't want to go outside because you're nervous and you're afraid. Because you think, what if there's a fuzzy orange and black thing out there that might attack me? So this fuzzy orange and black thing is a concept now in your mind that you're concerned about. So you look out and you notice there are a bunch of different shrubs and bushes outside this cave. Without wanting to, a part of your brain is going to put behind every single shrub and every single bush an orange and black thing that might cause you harm. Now you're going to have a reward from that because in your own brain you're now going to be hyper vigilant. Everyone's going to want you to work with them as a hunter because you're able to think of all the places that the tiger might hide. Now that works really, really well and gives you a huge advantage. So you build a beautiful skill set around the fact that you can assess and sometimes even identify where this tiger might be hiding to prevent other people from getting harmed or injured. But it also puts you into this hypervigilant state that doesn't necessarily work all the time. It sets you on edge, gives you more stress. This works really, really well until eventually, next door, a tiger-killing tribe shows up. They've got tiger pelts all over their backs. You look over outside of your cave, you see this tiger-killing tribe. And even though that tribe would be the best tribe ever for you to join and be a part of so you could just gather nuts and berries for the rest of your life, you don't want to go near them because they represent that thing that you fear. So your subconscious brain won't let you go to that tribe and befriend them because if you did, your entire world would not make sense. Now, I bring this up because that trauma that you went through as a cave dweller, being attacked by a tiger, it has a time and a place. You learn something important from it, But when the environment changes, when you grow up or you grow out of it and a tiger killing tribe shows up next door, that's the time to reassess. Is this lie or is this story compelling enough to keep me from my penthouse of everything I want? So I bring this up because I like to use it as an example of how trauma can serve us when we're young because it teaches us a great lesson. It can even give us an incredible skill set as we get older. But the benefit of that skill set, there's a ceiling to it. And once you hit that ceiling, you have to reassess. Do these lies make sense for me to continue to live in or not? So knowing that, we're going to jump into the top 4 lies, because all these lies will create suffering and poor decision-making unless we can look at them and change them into a different truth. So all of the lies that we're about to talk about violate some level of fundamental truths that lead the world and make the world a better place. So we're going to talk about, number 1, what are the 4 lies? And then we're going to talk about what are the truths that help you reinvent and remove the stress of those lies so that you guys can make more money, create more deals, have more amazing teams in support of you as you choose to grow. Would that be helpful?
Yes.
All right, here we go then. Number 1, this is the first lie. This is one of my most favorite ones because when you're starting a business, we all think, oh, we have to be constantly productive. We have to almost step into being a workaholic because there's so much to be done. So the first lie that we all tell ourselves is that productivity is absolutely essential for success. Now, as you think about this lie, I want you to think about what behavior drives you into this lie. The behavior is actually a lack of connection. When you're not connected and you're forcing yourself into places of constant productivity all the time, you're actually not being able to turn off your brain. You're not being able to go home and connect with people that you care about. You're not having the same level of connection that might build bigger deals for you over time. So while everybody and their mother will tell you that productivity, you have to be constantly in action, constantly being productive is the key to all your success, it violates a fundamental truth. So I just want to ask, how many of you have lived in this lie? How many people on the call? You can just show by a raise of your hands. How many have ever thought, I have to be constantly productive, otherwise I have guilt, I have shame, I have some issue that shows up? Probably most of us. So
Well, yeah, one thing that I feel like is as business owners, we start our business so that we can have more freedom to do whatever. But whenever the time comes for me to go do whatever, I feel guilty that there's people in my company working, and I'm not. So I definitely feel that. Is that what you mean?
That's exactly what I mean. So this first lie will drive you into feelings of guilt. It'll drive you into feelings of not taking care of yourself. It'll drive you into feelings of overworking merely because there's a part of you that believes that you have to be productive to be successful. So this is the first lie. Let's jump into the second lie. The second lie is it all falls on me. The belief that you have to carry the weight of the world for yourself, for your team, for your family, that if you don't do it, it won't be done right. Now, what behavior do you think this lie drives you into?
Working too much, working a lot.
Well, working a lot, right? So that was lie number 1. So workaholic, nature for sure. But for this lie too, when you decide it all falls on you, you're going to isolate yourself, right? You're not going to team very well with others. You're not going to delegate very well to others. In fact, you might try to hold your team to commitments. Or you might try to hold yourself to bigger commitments. But if you don't have support and you're not handing things off, you might not be able to hit those commitments.
We have some good chats here. So Venus says they were raised that way. Trevor says, yep. Aaron says never relinquishing control or delegating. And then Venus says superhero complex. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, heard of all these things. And unfortunately or fortunately, they work to a certain degree until they don't. And for most of us, when you live in the lie that it all falls on you, you're going to tell yourself, I have to do it all myself. I have to jump back in when people are trying to learn so that they don't make mistakes. I have to take over everything. But what you end up experiencing at the end of the day is you're completely exhausted by the fact that you have overcommitted to so many different things. And that puts you constantly behind, at least in your own mind. So that's not necessarily the best place to make decisions from. So how many of the people on the call here, how many of you all have noticed that you live in this lie? You can raise your hand, you can post in the chat. I just want to see who this is relevant for. Yep. And it's okay if you have line number 1 and line number 2. That's completely the way I lived my life for a while too. So I understand it. And
a lot of yeses in the comments.
Lots of yeses. Okay, good. So line number 2 is resonating. I love it. I love the hands showing up too. This is great. So we got lie number 2. Now we got lie number 3. Suffering or grinding as your fuel. So I bring this up because almost every male entrepreneur I've ever worked with, and many of the female entrepreneurs too, they put off anything that could be satisfying for themselves so that they can drive harder. And they usually use some concept of suffering or grinding from their childhood, some story or some truth that they created to drive them. Like, oh, I have to prove myself to this person, or I have to show this person that he was wrong. So the reason why I bring this up is this really puts you into a place where you can't experience fulfillment or satisfaction from what you're completing. Or if you do, it's very, very short-lived. So how many of us have a goal for our business, and once we reach the goal, we set another goal? Almost all of us, right? So we don't feel a lot of that fulfillment when we reach the goal. We're just jumping into the next thing. That's an indicator that you might be living in more suffering or grinding as your fuel than anything else. Does this resonate with all of you guys? That you might be using more negative motivation to propel you forward, might be using that negative grind or that belief you have to grind to drive results, so they don't feel as fulfilling as they could be. This also means you usually put out fires really well, and you like putting out fires because you feel valued when you put out the fires in your business. You might be a little addicted to the fires. So that's line number 3. How many of you have experienced that? If you could post that in the chat too, just let me know. How many of you have used either suffering or grinding as your fuel to drive results or move you forward? Now, if you're saying to yourself, almost every one of these lies I have lived in at some point in my life that is very normal, I went back for the last 15 years and assessed all the thousands of people that I worked on with their businesses, and these were the top 4 lies that they all experienced. So very, very normal if you're in the same space as they were. Now we've got line number 4. Comparison and competition are essential for growth. So this one I love because this is the one that the behavior that drives this lie is your need for external validation. So if you're constantly comparing yourself to the other people in the space, if you're like, gosh, he got 4 deals last week and I only have 1, or he got 1 deal last week and I only have 2, or I now have 2, so I'm better than he is. If there's this constant comparison and competition instead of this support for each other, you know you're in this lie. Now, the behavior that seeking external validation drives, what do you think that behavior is, or what do you think the negative feature is if you're constantly comparing yourself to everybody else in the space?
Even if you've achieved a lot and you're in a much better position than when you started, it robs you of feeling happy or satisfied or relaxed.
Correct.
I'd say unhealthy pride, or if you don't measure up, insecurity.
100%. 100%. And when you go home, and I don't know if you have families, anyone on the call, but when you go home and you bring that insecurity home, then you're not showing up for your family and all your masculinity or all your femininity if you're a female, right? It just changes the way you show up to the people in your life that you most care about. So you both are dead on. I love it. Anybody else want to share? What else? What's the negative environment that this creates for you, both, say, in the office or with your clients or even with your family, if you're constantly comparing yourself or competing with others?
You can't feel in control of your own destiny because you're always contemplating what others are doing to understand or validate what you've done.
100%. So do you think that takes up some time in your subconscious thought, which is driving 97% of all of your decision making?
Absolutely. Yep.
Right? Because that means you're coming from a fear-based mindset instead of a growth-based mindset. So this is why we address these lies now, because in a moment, I'm going to teach you the fundamental truths that invalidate these lies so that you don't have to live here anymore. So how many of us have lived in this lie? All right. So a lot of people on this call. All right. So at this point, if you've said yes to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 of these lies, you're exactly where you need to be for the solutions that are coming. Okay. So what I like to do before I reveal the truths is I like to talk about, again, and reiterate that when we act in untruth or in lies, we create suffering in our lives. So right now, for every single person on this call, I want you to write down one area of your life where you feel you are suffering. One area of your life that you know could be better, but you haven't been able to achieve that yet. That area of suffering, if you look at that, you're going to find out that there's some lie from your childhood that is dictating how you see that reality. When you live in the suffering, when you live in the lie, you will always have a difficult time in business, in your personal life, and other areas. When you act in truth, though, and you're able to reframe the lie into a truth, then everything gets easier. So what makes something true or untrue in our lives is if our lives are easier or if they're harder. So anytime you're suffering, just remember, if you go back to the belief that is linked to that suffering, you will have the solution and the way to find out your truth. So I'm going to make this real now for a moment for each one of you. So what are the 4 fundamental truths to lead your business? So you can drive more profit, you can build more revenue, you can close more deals, you can have a better and more fulfilling experience of life. Number 1, we said the lie was productivity or staying busy is essential. Well, guess what? That violates the fundamental truth of the rule of connection. So when you're in extreme productivity, you're actually disconnected from yourself, from your team, from your emotional state, and from the connection you can build with your clients. You might have the formula for creating connection. You think you have the formula, but if your energy isn't in that experience of connection, you're not going to be in the right place. So I wanted to give you all a connection formula that allows you to step into the rule of connection so that you could remove this lie and get out of that whole staying busy being essential to your success. You can let that lie go to step into the truth of connection instead, because connection honestly is the only currency that matters, whether it's with your clients, whether it's with your lead managers, it's with your sales teams, it's with your acquisitions reps, it's with yourself. Connection is everything. So the connection formula is you have to be authentic, you have to be vulnerable, and you have to trust first. So that's your connection formula. If you want lie number 1, not to dominate in your subconscious thought. How is this landing with each one of you? When you hear this, is it shocking or are you like, well, of course I try to be connected, but do you notice how when you're overly productive and you're in that workaholic mode, you're not connected to yourself energetically or to your family members when you come home at the end of a long day? Can I hear
the vulnerability part is scary as hell.
Scary.
I'll love up the authenticity and the trust, but the vulnerability has always been something. I don't know if it's from military or from background or whatever, but it's nope.
Well, let me tell you, Sean, I was married to a Navy SEAL for 15 years. And so his hardest thing was this vulnerability. And he and I worked on this connection formula because he's like, we've got to help people to understand that vulnerability is literally the most important piece. So I know it might scare the heck out of you, but if you're able to share something vulnerably with members of your team or even your clients or even, your spouse or your significant other or your kids, it opens up their ability to connect more deeply with you. And here's the true fact of it. Whenever you are actually vulnerable and the person is someone that you trust and they trust you back, they will actually love you more and think you're more amazing than they know you to be right now. So if you're going to hold to that concept, it'll really serve you. But hopefully this connection formula helps. And I get vulnerability is one of the scariest things. But Sean, it might be from the military for sure. But if you're willing to step into it, you're going to see a dramatic change in your business if you hold to this connection formula.
I want you guys to think about our sellers and the people that you guys are going out visiting their homes. They're in less than stellar situations. They're in financial distress. They've gone through divorce. They've got death in their lives. They're going through relocation. They are in this fight or flight mentality. This concept of connection, vulnerability plus authenticity plus trust. What do our sellers want? They want someone that they can trust and rely on and feel connected to. They're literally selling their houses. They're literally uprooting their life. So if we can lean in here and we take ownership of this formula in our sales process, this actually will help you close more businesses, increase your deal spreads because they feel connected to you, help them accomplish more in what they're doing as well.
And guys, this is my business partner, Jenny. I asked her to be on this call because she is a complete badass when it comes to inking more deals and helping us with marketing spend so that it converts very easily. So I just wanted you all to know she's going to jump in here when she feels like she wants to really take something in and make sure it all is cemented for you guys. So this is line number 1 that we are now disproving because it violates this rule of connection, and we're giving you a formula for connection so it can be easier every single time. How does this land? Would you guys just post in the comments a little bit of feedback for us? Like, does this hit you pretty hard? I'm really proud of Sean for sharing how much the vulnerability stuff scared him. How does this sound for all of you, knowing that you don't have to be constantly productive, but you do have to be connected? Well, Aaron, if it makes you feel shameful to acknowledge that productivity results in disconnection, that's okay, right? Because it might be that, there's something in your background from when you were a kiddo that connection didn't make you feel good. Maybe there's something there to look into. So very, very normal to have reactions as you start digging into some of these lies, because these lives have been the backbone of how most of us have lived and pushed ourselves for so long. I'm just letting you all know that when you get to the end of these lies being productive for you, that's when we got to make some changes. And I think for a lot of you, you're reaching those points. That's okay. So we addressed lie number 1. Now we're going to go into truth number 2. So lie number 2 is all about it falling just on you, where you have to do everything on your own. You got to take it all and own it all. And you have to jump back in so that mistakes aren't made. Now, this violates the fundamental rule of team. So our success in life depends 100% on our ability to coordinate action or to team with other people. If you're suffering in any area of your life, look at the teams that you are on. You'll identify the team that needs the most work because you're not putting in an effort to build the team. So if you don't want to live in this line anymore, if you want to be able to delegate, to be able to use resources effectively, to have people be loyal and supportive of you, they need to know that you are a team with them. And you need to look at everything as, how do I build a better team with every single person I interact with? And you can do that using that connection formula from the slide right before. So
including your homeowners. I want to make sure you guys hear that piece. Like, this formula, it translates into every avenue of your life, but it is absolutely necessary to win the business from a homeowner. We have to connect. We have to establish trust. That's how we have to do more deals.
Hey guys, if you know you want to quit your job in the next 3 months, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast, because we've got some incredible frameworks with step-by-step instruction that you're not going to want to miss. Also, leave us a rating and review to let us know your favorite parts and why you want to get financial freedom.
So how's everyone feeling, right? As we start hearing these lies and now we start seeing the truths. Because it feels a lot easier for a lot of us to live in the truth of team, to live in the truth of connection. Because these truths are inherent to who we are as human beings. We've just been telling ourselves that we get more done, or we are more productive, or we drive more results the other way. But what if that was a lie? Just something to think about. Now we're going to jump into lie number 3. So we talked about using suffering as a fuel. This actually violates the fundamental rule of success. So we've all been conditioned to believe since we were young is that success is not a goal, or success is a goal or an objective, right? You set a goal, you race towards that goal, you hit that goal, then you immediately set the other goal, the next goal. The problem with this is you don't feel very much. There's not a lot of fulfillment. You reach a goal, you're excited for a brief blip of a moment, and you're on to the next thing. We've all experienced that. But if we redefine success and we look at the rule of success and we see success as a feeling and not as a goal or an objective, and we redefine it to be success as an optimized daily experience that we sustain over time, suddenly we can experience success every single day, multiple times a day. So there's no need to use suffering or grinding as a fuel to push us forward if we can experience success that we want to feel almost every moment of the day. Now, this is one of the things that completely blew the minds of the first group that I ever talked to this about a few years ago. They're like, I have always thought of success as a goal or objective, and that's probably why I felt not as fulfilled my whole life. Because you can race from goal to goal to goal, but it doesn't mean you're going to feel a lot in that experience. So if you want to get rid of this lie, to feel like you don't have to prove to other people, that you don't have to use a negative motivator, you got to redefine how you see success in your world. How does this definition of success hit all of you? How does it land when you hear it? That success is an optimized daily experience that you sustain over time.
Spencer says, success is a windy, bumpy, rocky, obstacle-laden road with problems and trials that have to be solved and conquered. We have to find joy in that journey. I think Spencer should also be a poet. Man.
Spencer, that was beautifully written. But here's the thing. If you think of it as that bumpy road with all those trials and tribulations, that's going to create some suffering for you. Yeah, it would be great if we could find some joy, but what if we define success as an optimized daily experience where joy was woven in to the experience, and we sustained that level of excitement, joy, connection over time? The emotional deposit, that emotional piece is so profound and important for all of us, but only if we redefine success as a feeling. It's not
The way that this was a huge mindset shift for me personally. We've all been kind of brought up with the salesman's creed of always be closing, and we've got that closer's mindset, ABC, always be closing. And the focus of that concept is on the close. When we focus on the result, we show up different in our process. Have you ever gone to a seller's house or to a homeowner and you're like, I got to get this deal, I got to get this deal, I got to get this deal. And then you show up and you're impatient, you're not listening, you're not asking great questions, you rush through your process, because when you're focused on the close, you show up different in the process. And when we focus our energy and our definition of success on that end result, if we get the deal, we feel great. If we don't get the deal, we feel like we suck. But 1 + 1 will always equal 2, right? The always be closing mentality will focus your attention on that 2 all day long. But we can find joy in the process, whether we get the deal or we don't get the deal, and we can optimize that 1 + 1. This mindset is a daily optimized experience that is sustainable over time. I'm focusing my energy on that 1 + 1 all day long.
Patty says, by all accounts, I'm successful, but I don't often feel successful.
That's because we have to redefine success for you, Patty, because the success has, up to this point, I believe, been very focused on the goal and the objective, and you have the results to prove it, but you haven't felt how good it feels to be in your life. And this is a little point for Patty, and everyone can apply it. Patty, if you were to look at your ideal day and put together, this is what I want my day to look like so I can feel a certain way throughout my day, resetting the structure of your day for the feeling is going to change the game dramatically for you. I do this for a lot of the people that I work with. Sometimes it's too big of a concept for a quick call, but the concept is we want to redefine success so you can feel it. And that's part of what this means and what we do. So lie number 4, comparison is essential for growth. This violates the fundamental truth of the rule of purpose. When you let somebody external to you dictate what you have as your purpose or what you need to do, no matter what you achieve, you will not feel fulfilled. Purpose comes from an internal understanding. It's internally derived. So if you allow the world or other people in the industry to dictate your worth, your value, your purpose, you will always fall short. If instead you internally set that purpose, you're like, you know what? My goal for myself is this. My end state that I want to create, the emotionally successful future, is this. Then my experience as an entrepreneur, my journey is valued. I don't have to compare to anybody else because I'm on my own journey to learn my own stuff so I can get where I need to go. It doesn't matter if people are doing it faster, better around me. If they are, it just means it can be done. So I just really want this to hit home. If you're looking for external validation of what you're doing, it will never fuel you with the joy and the excitement and the creation. What you want to look at is your own rule of purpose and figure out, how do I internally derive this and create this so it's not something I'm expecting or wanting or searching for in the outside world. You know, this one's a little bit heavier for everybody. How's this landing? David, how are you feeling as you hear some of these things?
Okay, what I'm thinking of is I've gotten into competitive wake surfing this year, and I put in like a lot of work, like 3 times per week, you know, doing lessons and stuff. And I look across the lake and I see somebody doing these tricks I can't do. My first thought is like, oh man, screw that person. I feel like I've done so much work, but I can't do that yet. But then my second thought is like, okay, why am I being so stupid like that? Obviously, they've probably even done this longer than me. And why does that even matter? That's what I'm thinking of.
That's what happens to all of us, right? We're all in that same situation. We see someone doing it faster or better, and we're like, why am I even trying? I'm never going to be like that. Or, whoa, they're so much better than me. How did they get there? Instead of being like, oh, they can do it? That just proves that I can do it. Right? It's a whole different way of thinking. So I hope this lie can be resolved for a lot of you if you go back to this purpose, right? Your journey is your own. You can't fast track it. You can't rush it. You're going to go through it. You're going to learn all your lessons, but don't devalue your journey by looking at everybody else's and thinking theirs is better. It's not. Because what you are creating is yours. Your wake surfing journey, David, is yours, and you're going to get to those tricks and flips and all those things when it's your time and when it means the most to you, not when you see somebody else do it and compare yourself. So that's
But
a
I
great.
think, David, having that target in your mind of accomplishment of something that motivates you and drives you, the question isn't how are they doing, how long, or it's today, what action can I take to improve my, what is it, surfing?
Wake surfing.
Lake surfing. What do I need to do today to get better at my process?
Mm-hmm. That feels better when I think like that.
Right? Yeah. What can I do today? What's the thing I'm going to do to get better for my process and value my journey? I love it.
I do like what you said. Because they're doing it, that means I could do it. That's also helpful.
Yes. And if anybody wants to really reset their brain, the book Mindset by Carol Dweck is phenomenal at this because it forces you to look at where am I fixed in my thought patterns that are completely subconsciously destroying my ability to move forward. So really, really helpful book, Mindset by Carol Dweck. What I did here, though, was I created this easy roadmap. If you're going to take a picture of any slide, this is the slide to take a picture of or to remember. This is your roadmap to your truth. Okay, so if you guys want a quick cheat sheet to how do I get from the lie that's been running me that doesn't sound good and doesn't give me ease but creates a lot of suffering, you first have to identify the area of suffering that you're in what area of your life. Then you try to identify the lie that you've been telling yourself about that area of suffering. Then you're going to want to identify the false reward. Okay, what am I getting from staying in this lie other than the suffering? There's always a skill or there's something that you're receiving that you like, that you're trying to stay within that lie to hold on to. Then you're going to look at the cost or the threat of staying in that lie. So what happens if I stay here? If I don't make any changes, I don't change anything at all. I just stay in this lie. What's the threat that's going to show up in my business or in my personal life? And then you can reframe the truth to be like, okay, if I know what the threat is of staying here, I can figure out what my truth might be to get me free. And then you have to choose to take action towards that truth every day. Now, I'm giving you guys what is like literally the quick version of how brains work as they process new information to shift you out of the old story that drives your subconscious into a conscious choice that is the best decision-making tool for every area of your life. It's quick and short, but I want to give you something that can be helpful. Now, if that roadmap to truth is too much, I want to give you the most important question. So if you can identify, first off though, if you can identify your lies and you can figure out how to live more in your truths, then you'll have the biggest breakthroughs of your life. You'll reach your highest level of performance. You'll step into your calling and you'll feel the fulfillment of it. And you'll also identify more wealth building opportunities. Now, for a lot of people, that 6-step process to your roadmap to truth can be too complex. So let me give you the quick version, the one question you got to ask yourself. What do you want to be true? Most important question you'll ever ask in your life. If you're in a moment of suffering or a moment of one of those lies shows up, you ask yourself instead, what do I want to be true? Because the lie is always what you don't want to be true. It makes you feel horrible, makes you feel bad. You don't like the feeling of it. If you ask yourself instead, what do I want to be true? What you want to be true might be the complete opposite, which gives you a path to freedom. So if you take nothing else away from this conversation, take this question and use this question over and over again for yourselves to validate your entrepreneurial journey in real estate and to allow you to bring more of who you are to every single client, every single situation, and to get out of the power of these lies that have, for many of you, limited your growth. So I figure now we should probably open up some questions if we have time. I know I gave a lot of information, which is probably a little bit mind-boggling, a little bit like a fire hose, but this is what allows our brains to come up with new solutions, new creative and innovative processes. So if y'all have questions, please jump in.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the chat on this one. Questions about this or anything else that you guys might be struggling with right now would be awesome to ask.
And this is, just so you all know too, this is part of the leadership development work that Jenny and I do when we do sales training with a lot of the teams that come to us, a lot of the individual entrepreneurs that come to us. Because everything in life goes back to the mindset of how you lead yourself and how you lead others.
I have a quick question for Annie and Jenny. Do you think that, and I coach, I think I recognize your name. I think we coach and speak in some of the same areas. I do title and mortgage and real estate. So, so my question is I've always interpreted this as to the extremes. If you're productive to the extreme, if you're trauma to the extreme, if you're stressed to the extreme, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, because I think suffering and stress and trauma actually can be motivating. For me, I'm more of a away from person as opposed to a to person when it comes to carrot stick. I've always just thought of it more as in the extremes, it's a bad thing. But what I'd love to, if it's appropriate here, I'd love to hear it.
Totally appropriate. So here's the only concern I have with that is that most of us only live in the extremes, but we compare ourselves to the people that are more extreme than us to make our extreme okay. So where you might say, oh, I'm not stressed at the extreme. Well, how do you define extreme, right? Is it in comparison to somebody else, or is it within your understanding of extreme, right? Because again, we're going to create an environment where we are feeling more extreme stress, more extreme. We might push ourselves into more extreme productivity, where normal people around us might look and be like, gosh, that person has worked 18-hour days for the last 2 years. That seems extreme, right? But we have to figure out what is extreme for us, because if you're in an extreme place and you're using that as a comparison to someone else, you don't want to do that. You want to shy away from that and instead look at, okay, if this is my extreme and this is my low point, what's in the middle ground that still gets me great productivity, good success, and I feel good at the same time, right? It goes back to redefining success for yourself. But I love that question, because we can't really tell what our extreme is, usually, unless we're comparing it. And that also sets us up for failure there. Hopefully that helped. Did that make sense, Sean?
It does. I thank you. And the only, I guess, follow-up I would ask is that I don't mean to sound condescending when I say this about the normal population, but I think most of us sitting on this Zoom aren't normal, right? We're doing
none of us
extra
are.
work. We're doing all this stuff to have more extreme success, do what you do now so you can have what you want later. So that's where, with the comparative. So I guess that's what I was thinking is when I talk to normal people, quote unquote, they're the ones that average out.
Yeah, entrepreneurs are always going to be the highest performing, but here's the issue, right? You're going to be high performing and you're going to get stuck in that concept of, I'm going to do as much as I can now so I have more later, but you might not get more later. That's the problem for most people, right? So how do we create the experience of our life now to be good so we have some emotional deposits and aren't working at the extreme all the time for something that we may or may not achieve later? We may or may not get to that place. I've had so many high-level performers who have been extreme performers, created incredible results, and then they did have a heart attack at 50, right? So this is where what we're trying to have everyone embody is not be at the extreme all the time, but to be at a place where your success is defined by you to be optimized for your daily experience so that you can feel more fulfilled every single day with everything you do. Because then life is really beautiful and powerful and you're experiencing all the good in this moment instead of waiting for something that may or may not come 10, 20 years from now.
Sean, the best way that I have been able to answer this question, I'm 4 years sober. I'm going on a little over 4 years sober. And what I learned through that sobriety journey is if I focus on my laurels and rest on the fact that I didn't drink yesterday, it brings me to pride. And if I focus too far into the future, it overwhelms me. And so what they taught me in AA was to focus on the next right step and what is the next right thing. And so Annie is not saying comparison isn't good. I compare myself today and my decision right now in this moment to my decision next moment. I don't focus on the extreme of yesterday and I don't focus on the future, because when I do those things, I'm not optimized, I'm not enjoying my life, and I'm not fulfilled. I have to focus on what are my priorities, what are the absolute most important things, and what makes the most sense next. What is my next right step? And I can't think 40 steps ahead. I got to take the right step, land firmly where I'm planted, and make the most of every moment. And so that, for me, when I think of these concepts, that has been my testament, my journey, my experience. So I don't know if that gives perspective, or at least an example of what some of these things look like played out in real life.
And let me just be clear. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I put in there, one of my favorite quotes is Ed Milet. He's blissfully dissatisfied, right? So he's happy now, but he's still striving for more, but he's still living and being happy in the moment. That's what I strive for, is just being blissfully dissatisfied without resting on my laurels.
And I do want to address what Skylar put in the chat. Why wouldn't I want to compare myself to others? It's literally the propeller to do better than them, especially if they're extremely successful. Being relaxed doesn't bring optimized results. I'm not asking you all to be relaxed. What I'm asking for you to do is not compare your journey to someone else's, other than to see it as possible for you to be on the journey that you're on. So it's not that I'm saying, oh, we should all be relaxed. That's not the point. The point is, if you want optimized results, you have to get yourself out of a nervous state of franticness. That is that push energy, comparing yourself to everybody else all the time. That doesn't work unless you have been motivated your whole life by that negative grind, right? It'll work really well for you, Skylar, probably for the next 5 years, and then you're going to hit the burnout rate. And at that point, you're going to want to look about this. You might even remember this conversation. So we're not saying be relaxed. We're saying create an optimized environment for yourself so you don't hit burnout and you can stay in a really optimized space where you're only in the value of your own journey, being very present to it. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks for addressing that. And thank you for sharing that, Jenny. I like how you said it's overwhelming to think so far in the future, but thinking about just yesterday gives you a lot of pride. There's a couple other things in the chat I definitely wanted to mention. Can you read, do you see that one from Juliana? She says, I really don't trust myself anymore. I'm kind of like losing my, my confidence in moving forward with real estate. She's kind of lost her passion.
So, when that happens, Juliana, the real key is we got to get you focused on your purpose, right? What is the reason why? And you're going to have to ask yourself this like at 3 different levels. What is the why for why you even got into real estate in the first place? And what was the reason why that thing mattered to you? And then go why 3 levels deeper. Because the reason why you're getting stuck is because that trauma pattern is likely not giving you any options that you can see. So when I do a lot of work on removing the trauma patterns and helping people see them. So I would say this is probably like a couple of sessions and you'd be able to get out of that place because it's just a trauma pattern that's got you stuck. It doesn't mean you've lost your passion. It doesn't mean that you don't trust yourself anymore. It's actually the opposite. Like there's a part of you that's trusting this lack of feeling. It might be that you just don't feel the motion or the movement piece anymore. That might be something to look at. How do I create movement for myself? So we're going sort of deep into some of the subconscious work. So I'm apologizing if this is a little too much for you guys, but or too much to think about at once because it is sometimes really intense. But you're asking a lot of great questions.
I wanted to hear from Amy. She said that she's having trouble getting out of the gate. She'll get momentum, but then self-sabotage. Amy, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear what you mean more about the self-sabotaging.
Hi guys. So I'm not even sure I do it intentionally, but I will get great momentum. I will get, I'm also a retail real estate agent as well as an Asian investor, and doing wholesaling also. But I'll get listings going. I will have buyers locked in. I will have contracts and, everything will be going good. And then it's almost like, okay, wait, everything's going too good. And then this part of my brain just crawls under the covers and then refuses to come back out.
Amy,
and then stuff will just start falling apart.
Amy, this is totally normal. This is normally what happens when you have a fear of success. You don't fear failure. You fear what will happen if you are truly successful at this and what will change in your life. Your subconscious brain is likely afraid of the amazing change you would create. So in those moments, if you want to keep that momentum, just create for yourself, I call it the reality document. You create a document of all the things that are going right for you at that moment in time. And then you just keep reviewing the feeling of being in all those things going right at any one point of time. And it really helps you get through that momentum that could normally drop you. And you're not doing it. You're not trying to sabotage yourself consciously. You're sabotaging yourself subconsciously, which is why you might go through those cycles.
Yeah, no, I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm doing it subconsciously, but it's still okay, oh my God, I'm doing this cycle again. How do I get out of it?
Well, you have to know what the cycle actually is. Most of us on this call, we don't know what our subconscious trauma pattern is or a trauma cycle. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to go into it over and over and over again until you finally identify it. So that's something.
I keep thinking okay, can I please learn this lesson so that I can move on?
Yep. How many people on this call have ever been can I please learn this lesson so I can move on? almost all of us, right? So you are not alone in this. I had a gentleman come to me. He's like, I've made the same $9 million disastrous mistake now 3 times in my life. I need you to identify this pattern so I don't keep doing it. And we did. And he literally has completely changed everything in his life. He's in real estate. And now he doesn't have that problem. He hasn't made a $9 million mistake. He used to make it every 3 years. And now he hasn't made it in 5. So awesome. Success.
So, and our brains are Velcro for the negative, and we want to focus in on all the problems. Like if I tell you guys you're not going to see a Jeep Wrangler when you go out and drive, you're going to find every single Jeep Wrangler. So your brain is a machine, and so focusing back into when it was working, when it was right, what was I feeling? What was I experiencing when it was working? When I was doing all of the actions that led to the success, what was I feeling? What was I thinking? What was my environment? How was I talking to myself? What actions was I doing? Because instead of focusing on all the problems and all the things that we're doing wrong and trying to solve those, because our brain's just going to pull in more problems, more bullshit for us to process, right? Focusing back in on what was I doing that was working. Then I'm going to start looking and analyzing, okay, well, I'm still doing these things. I'm doing some of these things that are working. And then we start to feel more confident. And as we feel more confident and believe that we're confident, we start taking confident action. Does that make sense?
Hey. And I just
100%. Thank you.
So what we focus on expands.
So focus on the good things you're doing.
And more good things will come.
And I think, Jose, you said, how do we experience success daily without feeling like we're lying to ourselves? I think the key is you find the pieces of success that make you feel good, right? So it might be something so simple. Like I know a couple of these high-level entrepreneurs I've been working with, they're like, in the morning, I get up and I make myself a delicious breakfast because that's how I feel successful, is if I fuel my body and it feels really good, or I make sure I hit my workout, right? So if you want to experience success daily, you have to identify what are the feelings that I first want to feel and how do I engineer those feelings into my day consistently? Because if you engineer those feelings into your day, then you're not lying to yourself. You're just having a really good day over and over and over again.
I think we've got time for one more. I see Shannon and Paul. If you guys want to both squeeze in real quick. Shannon, what was your question?
Basically, I was just letting her know that what you're talking about today resonates with me totally. Because I work in, I'm going into real estate and I work in the rental car business, and I used to compare myself to people all the time in my business. And so I was obsessed with, getting a higher, revenue and becoming number one in my district. And I'd say about 7-8 years into the business of running my own agency that I did reach number one. And then I realized how much time I had wasted. And I realized that I hadn't gone on vacation. I hadn't gone on a cruise. I haven't done nothing. And somebody else wrote inside the chat that comparison to other people it's a thief. It's a thief of joy. So I just realized that everything you're saying is just resonating. That's all I had to say about that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome. And I addressed Paul's question in the chat, and I just want to reiterate this for everyone here. With line number 2 was that it all falls on me. So we tend to isolate ourselves, and then we think, I'll do it myself, or I have to do it myself, or I have to jump back in. The biggest shift you can make is to learn to ask everyone for help. And that's the biggest thing as entrepreneurs. We think that we're being weak when we ask for help. But if we can literally look at every time you ask someone for help, it gives them a chance to step into their purpose, which makes them feel fulfilled. So I used to be so afraid to ask for help, not ask for help from everyone. I'm like, how would I do this differently? Right? Because it gives that person purpose. And then you're both teaming together in a more profound way. And then you're connected, right? You're using that connection formula. So hopefully that helped.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So you're welcome.
Well, that was really, really impactful. I could tell by how active everyone was in the chat. So thank you so much, Annie and Jenny. Where do you guys want people to reach out to you? What is your website or social media?
Yep, you can find us on www.reisalestools.com. And if people want to do any leadership related training, that's northstarleadershipschool.com. So you've got both the real estate side for all the sales and the leadership development of you and your team. And then the other side, if you just want to do your own personal leadership work.
That's amazing. You guys, I know somebody was asking for replays, and we put the very best masterclasses on the Deal Machine Real Estate Investing podcast. So find that in your favorite podcast player and subscribe to that. We do every Friday one of these expert-led masterclasses, and based on the response, I would expect this one to be published there as well. If you guys have any Deal Machine questions, Ryan Hewitt does have his office hours, and we have the Facebook community. And one final plug for Deal Machine Academy. The latest, so we've got 12 people coming now, Paul Myers being one of them. The latest person who's coming is Jason Marks in North Carolina, and he's actually done $500,000 in his wholesaling business in the last year. And he came to me and he said, we're doing this really effective strategy that helps us sell our properties for a lot more than we typically could wholesaling. And I was like, you are? Well, what is it? And he said they actually do an installment method. So they actually will negotiate with the seller and they will give a down payment of maybe 10% of the total value of the house. And then they owe the rest of the money 120 days afterwards. So once they're able to actually purchase the property using that installment method, then they can list it on the MLS and sell it for top dollar. And so I thought that was a really interesting strategy. And he wanted to know, they're now limited by the number of down payments that they can make with their own cash. And so he's wanting to know, the best ways to raise private capital. So Jonathan Swanson, who's usually on these calls, I'm not sure if he's here today, is actually coming as well. So he told me that he's really excited to share with Jason, how he raises that private money. So it's going to be a 2-day event. And we've got a few slots left. And I know that everybody on this call, as long as you've done some deals, could get a lot of value from this. And so if you're interested, I'd really love for you guys to reach out to me. And you can do private chat. I'm giving you my email here or my Instagram as well. Either one of those would be amazing to talk to you guys. Because I know that you'll get a ton of value from spending 2 days with investors like Paul, Jonathan, and Jason. And we will meet here again at the same time and same place next week. Thank you so much, Annie and Jenny.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Machine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.